Okay, I think we can start. So today we have Jean-Marcel Rax, who comes from Université Paris-Saclay and IGC Lab, and he will be presenting the gravity-induced CP violation. So please, Jean-Marcel, the floor is yours.
Ok, merci d'abord pour l'organisation. So my name is Rax, and I was professor during 30 years at the University of Paris-Saclay, and at the same time during 20 years at École Polytechnique. And I take the opportunity of sabbatical years as fellow at the Engelberg Center at Princeton University to revisit the problem of CP violation, which is still an open problem. And I completed this work at my home institution in Orsay. So basically what I will solve is a three-body problem, a pair of pion and Earth. Earth is well known. This is a massive spherical object, but Keon is a system which, according to T. Dilley, is one of the most intriguing systems in nature. So I will, and Florian asked me to be pedagogical because of the various background in the room. So maybe some of you will find elementary some part of the talk. But to present the Keon system, it's a set of two particles, one particle and the antiparticle. So the mass is, roughly speaking, 1,000 times the mass of the electron, and they are oscillating. The particle bonds and gives the antiparticle, which bonds back and gives the particle. And the rate of this oscillation is delta m squared over h bar, and it's high frequency rate, but the ratio of the two mass, the mass describing the oscillation and the mass, the inertial and gravitational mass, is 10 to the minus 15. So there is a strong ordering. And this system of particles, these two particles, is famous since 1964. It was famous also before, but become more and more famous because Fitch, Cronin, and Turley discovered the CP violation. So C is the symmetry of charge conjugation associated with charge conjugation. The particle gives the antiparticle, and P is parity. So after this discovery, CP variation was included in the standard model by Kobayashi and Maskawa in the CKM by just introducing a phase. There was a free parameter, so they fixed the free parameter to fit the experimental data. It does not provide, it provides a framework to work, but it does not provide an explanation. And it's so, in some sense, this CP violation, which is very different from P violation with weak interaction. P is violated at 100%. Here it's 10 to the minus 3. In some sense, this inclusion in the standard model is unsatisfactory, and it's just setting a new fundamental constant of nature besides C, H, E, M, and so on. And moreover, this inclusion is at the cost of some problems. So if you want to construct a coherent model of elementary particle, and if you introduce this CP violation factor, you end up with the prediction of axions, the strong CP problem, prediction of the neutral moment of the dipolar moment of the neutron, and so on. So it's why I say in the introduction that it's an open problem to find the origin of CP violation. However, this dark side of CP violation is balanced by a bright side of CP violation. CP violation is welcome because, as first explained by Sakharov in 1967, the asymmetry between baryon and antibaryon in in the universe can be explained if there is a CP violation at the elementary particle level. Unfortunately, the present level of CP violation in Mason experiment is far, far too small to explain the present asymmetry between baryon and antibaryon, and we are unable to write down early universe model predicting this present level. We will see that gravity solves the problem. That is to say, it explains the experiment, the observed three parameters observed experimentally. It predicts exactly these three parameters. And moreover, as gravitation is a source of CP variation in the early universe, as the strength of gravitation is very strong, you can set up model to explain the present asymmetry, baryonic asymmetry of our universe. Okay, so the outline of this talk will be first a presentation of the strange particle for those of you who come from mostly from astrophysics and so on. Then I will present a model, the canonical model used to describe a pair of strange mesons. Then the modification associated with the fact that I will take into account not only two particles, weak interaction, strong interaction, but also the Earth, the impact of Earth. This will be done in the usual way by considering a Newtonian potential. And this, taking into account Earth, will lead us to introduce matrix element of the strange quark behavior inside the meson. So I will explore the so-called Zitterbewegung fast motion of strange quark, which are fermions. And then after this, we will solve this model and find both direct and indirect CP violation parameters as they are measured in experiment. And I will give the conclusion. You can find the detail in the three papers, which are on arXiv. The first two are within a relativistic framework. That is to say, I take a Schwarzschild metric and Klein-Gordon equation to describe neutral kaon. I find the very same result as taking a Newtonian framework and classical quantum mechanics. And I will present the Newtonian derivation. But fully relativistic one gives the very same result. So strange particles were discovered in 1947. At that time, they were called V particle because the track in a bubble chamber as the shape displays the shape of a V. And it was, the behavior of this particle was very strange, and it was called at that time the theta-tau puzzle. And this puzzle was solved by Gell-Mann, Pais, Nishikawa, who introduced the strangeness as a new quantum number, and these are strange particles to kaon, and V particles are kaon. So this strangeness identification takes place in the same intellectual atmosphere as basically the end of the 50s and the East Coast in US, as the identification, first as the speculation about parity violation in weak interaction by Li and Yang, and then the experimental observation by C.S. Wu of this parity violation. So there is a link in between strangeness identification and parity violation speculation and then identification. And at that time, in 57, Li and Yang with proposed a model, speculate about the violation of the charge conjugation symmetry and about the time reversal symmetry. And they set up a model which is used, the canonical model, to describe this physics. Just after the discovery of CP violation in the kaon system, so these two particles which oscillate between particle and antiparticle, some physicists try to explain this observation by considering the influence of Earth, that is to say, by considering gravity. There was a bunch of, to say, 10 or 15 papers at that time. Most interesting one was one paper by Ephraim Fischbach from Purdue in the 80s, where so all the conclusion of this paper, the conclusion of all this paper were negative. Earth has no influence on, no detectable, measurable influence on this neutral meson system. But in one of the 80 paper, Fischbach point out, so he say also that the answer was negative, but he point out a combination of the strengths of gravitation, the characteristic of the meson, which was of the order of the violation parameter. So it was a numerical coincidence, but there was no model associated with this. This problem was revisited by Gabriel Chardin in the 90s. And I was, and Gabriel Chardin drew me in this problem at that time. I was a postdoc at Oxford and at Princeton. And I remember Gabriel visiting me and we talk about that. But with the hypothesis of anti-gravity, a very provocative hypothesis. This was very interesting because there was argument, not demonstration, and it was the source of my own interest in this problem. Okay, so let us consider the so-called Lee-Young model, how to describe this two particle state. So, meson system, so the former V particle of the 50s, is simply described by, you say you have you have an Hilbert space with one particle and its antiparticle, one kaon and one anti-kaon, and you describe it by two quantum amplitude A and B, which evolve as a function of time, tau, which is the proper time in the rest frame of the system. You must complete the normalization and the orthogonal condition on the Hilbert space by a convention, because you cannot measure the phase of the quantum state. You can only measure the relative phase. So by convention, we fix Cp, charge conjugation parity of the particle, equals the antiparticle, so that we will see that the combination, linear combination with the same way will be eigenstate of Cp. And even if you take another convention, so you keep the convention all along the calculation, but at the end, what you calculate, observable quantities, must be independent of the convention. And if they are not, you use a rephasing factor, and we will see that it's important to understand this concept of rephasing factor to deliver results which are independent of the phase convention. So the so-called Lee-Young model is simply a quantum evolution with an Hamiltonian describing the energy, so the rest frame energy of the particle, mc square, the coupling between the particle and the antiparticle, this is matrix delta M, and the decay, because both particles decay, but they decay as linear combination, another quantum state. It's not the K naught or the K bar naught which decay, it's the K short and the K long. And the ordering between these various quantities is given in this column. To be more precise, you can consider this Hamiltonian as an effective Hamiltonian, where the various terms come from perturbation theory, where you consider the weak interaction. There is a point here which we must address, is the fact that we use a non-Hermitian Hamiltonian and describes the decay with the so-called Weisskopf-Wigner theory, which is basically to consider that you switch on your perturbation adiabatically, so slowly, according to an exponential, in the remote past. So implicitly, in this model, you have an arrow of time. To give you the technical explanation, if you have the time representation, if you go to the energy representation, you have to make a Fourier transform, but you make a your Fourier transform, you add up a term which gives this adiabatic switching in the remote past. When you solve a problem of quantum mechanics, you must start with a preparation of a state. So at t equals 0, you have Heaviside function. When you make the Fourier transform to go from time to energy, you get the Fourier transform of with this adiabatic switching of the step function, and you get this delta function, which ensure energy conservation, but at the cost of fixing an arrow of time. Moreover, we will add up gravitation, and we can question CPT, the validity of CPT theorem when you have a gravitational field, because the condition of validity of the CPT theorem is called vacuum, Lorentzian symmetry, and so on, which is not the case when you have gravitation. So we must not be surprised at the end to find CP evolution, because in some sense, we already, the ingredient of the model are even before CP evolution, contain CPT anti-violation. So the solution of, but this is just a remark, that's not a demonstration. So the solution of this is that you can find two stationary states. These are eigenstates of the energy, the so-called K1 and K2, which are the long-lived kaon and the short-lived kaon. One has a CP eigenvalue -1, so it should decay in 3 pion, and the other has a CP eigenvalue +1. And what was discovered by Cronin, Fitch, and Turley is evidence for the 2-pi decay of the K2 meson, so in 64. So a violation of CP. To summarize this model, it's just a simple model with the Hilbert space reduced to the two particle state, where there is an evolution and the mixing of the two particles and the dissipation. We will neglect dissipation because dissipation is phenomenological and we cannot mess up a phenomenological part, which moreover implies that you have T violation on an hour of time with the fundamental physics. So we will drop this part of the model, and we will see that when we reintroduce this part of the model at the end of the first unitary calculation with an Hermitian Hamiltonian, we find exactly what is observed numerically. In their seminal paper in 57, Li and Yang pointed out the fact that if you have a perturbation of the alpha type, so here, which appear on the diagonal, you break down CPT, but you are T invariant. But if you have a perturbation of the beta type of diagonal, you break down T invariant, but you keep CPT invariance. When CP violation was observed by Cronin, Fichte, and Turley, everybody consider a beta type of perturbation, CPT invariant. So both model here, alpha and beta, are break CP. CP is violated by both model, but in one you have T conservation, which is satisfactory, and on the other, T violation. So when there was the experimental observation in 64, all the community of particle physicists consider the beta type perturbation and so on and so on. And we will see that if you do clearly in a straightforward way the calculation with the influence of gravity, you find an alpha type, which we will see. Okay, so how to modify this canonical model of kaon oscillation to take into account gravitation and the influence of Earth in a simple way, in a very naive way, to consider a Newtonian potential. So rather than mc square, I consider this Newtonian potential where m is the mass of the kaon. The ordering is very favorable because it's a perturbation, so 10 to the -9, the rest mass. But we have to interpret in terms, this is quantum mechanics. So we have to interpret in terms of operator, all the quantity, all the dynamical quantity, which make our experimental setup, our observable. So I Taylor expand the position into the Newtonian potential as the sum of the radius of Earth, which will be a constant term, the average position of mass, because inside the quark, inside the kaon, a kaon is made of strange quark and a down quark. You have this fast motion of the quark. It's a very good motion, in fact, as these are fermions. And the average position is of this particle, these two particles, is the average position of the kaon, which is performing a free fall, but the experiment is so short that there is no time for really a free fall of the kaon. And a fast motion, and I call capital X the average position, and X the instantaneous position. It's like the Koenig theorem. When you have a system which is not elementary, you can decompose into external and internal degree of freedom. Moreover, the strange quark accounts for 96% of the mass and the d quark for 4%. So I will neglect the dynamic of the d quark. So I will consider the instantaneous position of the strange quark as the position which must be plugged into the Newtonian potential. So the Newtonian potential is the sum of, so the scalar expansion of the position, a constant where this is radius of Earth, the average position, a few meters, the altitude of the laboratory plus a few meters, and the internal fast motion. This is a small scale motion, but at very high frequency. So maybe something will happen. We will see. Okay. So I end up with this Hamiltonian. So to summarize, we can neglect the dynamic of the down quark as the ratio of the mass of the d quark over the mass of the s quark is of the order of 4%. The instantaneous motion of the mass energy barycenter inside the kaon is dominated by the strange quark dynamic. It's a 4% approximation. The lighter quark, D, are just follower of the kaon average motion and passive witness of the strange quark, Zitterbevego. The position to be used in the kaon frame Hilbert space is thus reduced to this red frame. It's just the canonical rule of quantum mechanics. A vector is an element of a vector space, and it's a bunch of numbers when you project on a basis, and an operator is an element of an operator space, and it's a bunch of numbers if you project on a basis, and the basis in this Hilbert space are just the projector and the cross projector. So this is, you recognize a classical textbook formula of quantum mechanics. But we will have to interpret what is this, what are these matrix elements between strange quark and position. The position operator within the Heisenberg picture fulfill Heisenberg equation, where HCK is a confining Hamiltonian inside the strange quark, inside the kaon of the strange quark inside the kaon. So you have your two kaon. Inside, most of the mass is on the strange quark. There's an unknown motion, but this fast motion fulfill an equation, and we will be able to write down the evolution, the quantum evolution equation. So I address the issue of the impact of Earth on the CP variation experiment of the kaon type by considering the instantaneous position operator, which is given by this. I can, so my new quantum evolution equation is given here, and I can get rid of these two terms because I make a change of variable from psi to phi through this phase. So capital X, even if it's a small free fall, it's a negligible phase. So these two phases which cancel this term in the equation are very small and cannot be observed, because these are the same phase for the particle and the antiparticle. So even with interference experiment, you cannot observe this, and these are small numbers with respect to this dominant phase, mass energy. So basically, psi is phi multiplied by this rest mass evolution term, and this psi fulfill, this phi fulfill this very simple equation. Very simple because the first term is just the mixing, the classical mixing between the two kaon. But the second term is an unknown. These are the matrix elements of the fast motion inside the kaon, the so-called Zitterbevego. Before trying to solve this equation, we can look at the ordering. It's a very tricky ordering because there is a frequency ordering and an energy ordering, and the high frequency component is the small energy component, and the low frequency component is the large energy component, which is contrary to what intuition say in quantum mechanics. You multiply the frequency by h and you get the energy. So the first term here is this matrix. The second term is this matrix on the basis. And the frequency of the motion is typically of a confined fermion is typically the wavelengths, the velocity of light divided by the wavelengths, the de Broglie wavelengths confining. So the frequency of X Loy is given by mc square over h bar. The frequency associated with this term is given by this, and we have a strong ordering 10 to the minus 15. In terms of energy, so the energy associated with this term is delta mc square, so it's a small micron EV energy, and the energy associated with mg, the position of the strange quark inside the kaon. So it's the Compton, yes, it's the Compton wavelengths, and mg, the Compton wavelengths, and it's very small. So there is also a strong energy ordering, but it's the reverse, the one which is large in the for frequency, the small for the energy. So we have a small parameter because this quantum evolution equation is just telling us an energy equal an energy plus an energy. And we have an energy ordering between these two terms, so we can perform classical perturbative expansion with respect to a small parameter. And when I say small parameter, it's a very small parameter, 10 to the minus 17. So I perform this expansion, and I have rather than one equation. Now I have two unknown, and I have two equations. And you can check that it's coherent with respect to the expansion parameter. The second equation describes the influence of Earth, and the first one is just the classical Li-Yang Kaon oscillation. Okay, so to solve, I will shape this equation in a more interesting form. I will solve the first one, so I will then plug into the second one. The delta M operator, which is this anti-diagonal matrix, has an inverse, which is up to a scalar factor, the very same operator. So I express phi naught as a function of the phi naught over the tau. Tau is the proper time of the Kaon, okay? So even if in experiment they go at the velocity of light, here we are in the rest frame. So here it's like a Schrödinger equation. It's a Schrödinger equation, so there is no relativistic effect at this level of the description. Okay, so I plug the solution of the first equation, or the reverse of the first equation, in the second equation, and I end up with this equation. Why am I doing this? Because here, it's a very important point. X is a high frequency motion, typically the frequency of the Zitterbewegung of fermion, of a confined fermion. Phi naught is also high frequency motion. It's the Kaon oscillation, Kaon mixing oscillation. And the product of the two might provide a secular term or almost secular term. And I don't know what is this secular term. So I must rearrange the equation. I change nothing, it's the same equation, but in another form, to display this secular term. And in fact, we will see that it's what I achieve through this, simply saying that when I plug the solution of the first equation into the second, I end up with this, and I recognize that the derivative here can be written. There is no approximation. It's just another way to write it in this way. What appear is the small parameter mg h bar over 2. M is the mass of the Kaon. Delta M describes the oscillation. And G is Galilean gravitation constant, and capital G is Newtonian weight. So I reshape the equation in this form, and I make no further approximation or no speculation of a field which comes from nowhere and so on. It's just, I would say, Cohen or Messier standard textbook quantum mechanics, nothing new. Okay, but I have to calculate this instantaneous position matrix element. And what I will calculate them, and it has to do with the so-called Zitterbewegung motion. So Zitterbewegung was discovered by Schrödinger soon after Dirac publication of its equation. And it's German. Zitter is like jitter, JT, Bewegung is in German strategy book, you have Blitzkrieg and Bewegungskrieg, la guerre de position. Bewegung is a position. So Zitterbewegung, in most of the textbook, you present Dirac equation, blah, 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 Lorentz invariance, and then you study free particle, simple solution, and you find that the velocity operator is C multiplied by a matrix where you have 1, uh, some or 0. And it's called Zitterbewegung because it implies that the instantaneous velocity of fermion is the velocity of light. Then you go to Foldy-Woutussen transform and you say, I can get rid of this, and now it's nice and so on. So it has a status. I don't know how your professor teach you Zitterbewegung, but personally, it was taught to me as something very strange and we don't do. So I look at Zitterbewegung here in unconventional textbook. In unconventional textbook, but with a famous author, you can, for example, take Feynman and Hibbs, The Quantum Mechanics and Path Integral. It's an old book. On page 45, Feynman proposed an exercise where you have space, time, x, t, and a zigzag motion. So you have a discrete step in space, discrete steps in time, but the velocity is always c. So you zigzag left, right, but at the velocity of light. And you dress, for example, this path from A to B with a probability, quantum probability amplitude, which is, because you have in mind to calculate path integral, to have the propagator from A to B. So the propagator is given here. N is the number of corners of the zigzag. C of n is the number of paths. It's a discrete number of paths for a given number of corners. And if you make this sum and you go to the asymptotic limit of a continuum, you find that it's the propagator of the Dirac equation. So it's the reverse, and it's usual with Feynman, the very original presentation, rather than stating Dirac equation and discovering that there is a very strange behavior at the velocity of light. If you start by a very strange zigzag behavior at the velocity of light, you end up with Dirac equation. First remark. Second remark, more recently, if you take the famous book, The Road to Reality of Roger Penrose, chapter 25, there's a chapter, the standard model, okay? So you expect that the first page, quark, so on. No, the first page, it describes a zigzag motion, and he said it's the earth of quantum mechanics. And this zigzag picture, he explained P violation by a weak interaction by saying that the zig is coupled to the W, but not the zag, and so on. It's speculative, but not 100% speculative, because the zigzag motion at the velocity of light, the Zitterbewegung motion, is argued on the basis of a rewrite Dirac equation as two coupled equations where the coupling is the mass. And then he says that the zig gives the zag because of the coupling to the X field and so on. But this part is speculative. So this is the unconventional view of Zitterbewegung, but it's very interesting. Interesting because it tells us that it's a high frequency motion. Let us take the conventional approach to Zitterbewegung motion and let us solve the problem we have, that is to say, calculate matrix element of strange quark, its antiparticle, and both of them confined into a kaon. So I write down Dirac equation, two Dirac equations, one for the strange quark, one for the antiparticles, the strange antiquark. The Hamiltonian are Dirac Hamiltonian with the alpha matrix, so it's a Dirac representation, and the alpha matrix are made with the sigma polymatrix. And I have this, and I don't know the confining potential. It's a self-consistent potential which ensures the identity of the kaon. It exists. It's a potential which confine. So I have these two equations. If I calculate the Heisenberg evolution of the position operator, the instantaneous position operator, I find the so-called, in standard textbook, is called the Zitterbewegung. That is to say, it's the velocity of light, because in alpha you have only one. For example, alpha x is 1, 1, 1, 1, like this. So if you can get rid of this and demonstrate that, okay, the instantaneous position is the velocity of light, but the instantaneous velocity is the velocity of light, but the average velocity is lower than the velocity of light, so everything is okay with respect to relativity. The picture, which is drawn here, is that, okay, you have probably a zigzag motion. But in addition, you have the Klein paradox that is in a confining potential, you can transform because there is a free energy somewhere and you can pick up some free energy to make transform the particle into the antiparticle. So it's a more tricky zigzag where you can flow back in time when the strange quark become an anti-quark. Okay, but it's a picture. So going back to the equation, we have 8 equations. If I want to describe the strange quark behavior inside a kaon, so I have a strange quark, the anti-quark. So I must write 2 Dirac equations, one for each particle. I have 8 equations. And if I consider one dimension, because I'm interested only by the altitude, because there is no coupling horizontally, there is only a vertical coupling. So it's a one-dimensional problem. So if I consider 8 one-dimensional Dirac equations with an unknown potential, confining potential U, I find that they collapse to 2 equations. It's 4 times the same system of 2 equations. So I find a solution of this type where lambda and mu are complex numbers describing the spin of the particle. These 2 functions fulfill this equation. I normalized to have one particle. I can demonstrate independently of the shape of the confining potential, independently of the mass. I can demonstrate these 2 identities. I multiply the equation on both sides and so on. And you can easily find that the matrix element of the alpha matrix, alpha x is sigma x, 1, 1, 1, 1, is 0 or 1. That is to say, the previous matrix is still unknown, but we know its derivative, it's 0, c minus c. It's because the instantaneous velocity of a confined fermion has to do with Zitterbewegung. So to summarize, we have this set of 2 equations. So we use the canonical rule of quantum mechanics. We find 2 equations, and we are able to express this operator, this velocity operator, which is multiplied by this part, this describes the strangeness association, and this part, the Quark-Zitterbewegung, and we have this coupling parameter, kappa. I use the French pronunciation for kappa parameter, which is here and here. Okay, so I can project, I can rewrite this set of 2 equations like this, and I can get rid of this last term. Why? Because it's a very high frequency term. So you remember, I have what term? I use Leibniz rule for derivation to say it's completely equal to 2 terms. And one of the terms becomes secular, this term, because of the Zitterbewegung, the instantaneous velocity is c. Here, it's not the instantaneous velocity. It's the cross between the Brown ket between particles, the strange quark and its antiparticle. This last term is a high-frequency term, and I can use the standard method of averaging because the frequency of the first 2 terms on the other side is a low frequency. It's basically of the order of the mixing frequency, the strangeness mixing frequency. And here it's of the order of the Zitterbewegung frequency. So I can use one of the typical methods from dynamical system theory, which are completely equivalent if you study dynamical theory. And it's one of my backgrounds, so it's why I'm fluent with this. So you have the so-called Bogoliubov-Krylov-Mitrov-Kolsky averaging method, which is just a method. You have to shape the equation such that there is a low frequency, high frequency, but it's tricky because you must Fourier analyze and so on. And then you average out the high frequency. It's completely equivalent. Maybe some of you know the Witham average Lagrangian. So you work at the level of the Lagrangian and you take advantage of something which is overlooked when you teach analytical mechanics. The fact that the Lagrangian, you can increase the number of variables to describe a system as you want. If you're able to write the Lagrangian, you increase the number of variables, but you increase the number of equations, the Lagrange-Euler equation. So, so it's very well-shaped for averaging method because you decrease the number of variables, but you decrease also the number of equations. So it's the so-called Witten average Lagrangian. Or, which is more popular, the two-time scale asymptotic expansion. You have a slow time and a fast time, and you make singular perturbation. Sorry. So I identify a time which is of the order of the Zitterbewegung period. And I average out the fast motion. And you see, as it's a derivative of something which is oscillating, the averaging and make it cancel. So to summarize all this, and I apologize, it was a term of algebra, but it's a price to pay. It has a cost to go deeper in this CP problem. Far from Earth or any massive object, the description of strange particles, strange mesons like kaon, is achieved with the standard Lie-Yang model. But near the Earth's surface, you have an additional term, these two additional terms with kappa of the order of 1.7 10 to the minus 3. Okay. CP violation now. So the two energy eigenstate of the equation of this equation are the exponent is to say that we are is to mention that we are on Earth as are given by this, and the tilde time evolution of the short-lived and the long-lived kaon are given by this. And the bracket, the so-called in the community of CP violation, you present the CP violation parameter. It's this scalar. It's imaginary. So it means that you have CPT violation, not CP and T violation, but CPT and CP violation. And it's imaginary. And in experiment, it's real. And moreover, it's not 1.71, it's 1.59, 1.6. So we miss the target, but we don't miss the target, in fact, because we drop the finite lifetime of the particle. So remember, if you get lost in all this algebra, we have a unitary model. On Earth, you have this additional term, which comes from very precise and cautious analysis of the impact of gravity. And in fact, in real experiments, you have dissipation, which is described by Wagner by scope approximation. So I define the observed state with a star. Okay, so the K-short decay, I assume that the K-short has a finite lifetime given by the experiment. And I assume that the long-lived kaon is still long-lived. It's a stationary state. And in doing so, I set up a very simple model of the experiment. What you observe in the experiment is the decay, the anomalous decay of the long-life kaon. And what is the dynamic of the short-lived kaon? The short-lived kaon is described by Schrödinger equation in its Hertz frame. So you have the mass of the short-life. You have the decay. We know the decay of them. And you have a gravitational regeneration. Why? Because the K-short and the K-long overlap. So the overlap of these two states in the Hilbert space is a regeneration term. And we have to calculate the rate of this overlap, and it's given simply by the algebra around these two stationary states. We can call this state bare state compared to dressed states which are dressed by dissipation, which are the real observable state. So in doing so, we reach an equilibrium between decay, so weak interaction, and gravitational regeneration. And this decay allows to calculate the overlap of the observed short and long-life kaon, which is given by this formula, the kappa, but modified by a factor of the order of 0.95. And you end up with 1.6 10 to the minus 3. In the experiment, it's 1.59. 10 to the minus 3. And if you correct by 4% by saying that you are missing 4%, you will find exactly, but it has no meaning. And start an approximation, you cannot reintroduce that. Yeah. So we find the experimental value of the so-called indirect CP violation. If you remain unitary rather than dissipative, you have a CPT violation. So more fundamentally, it must be considered as a CPT violation. So where does the T violation come from? It comes from a macroscopic effect, that is to say, you have an arrow of time or a T violation when you have either a large phase space or a complex dynamic. In both cases, you have irreversibility, that is to say entropy production, ds over dt positive, because your time of observation is shorter than the Poincaré recurrence time. So you say, okay, it's irreversible because you don't see the recurrence. You cannot wait for the Poincaré recurrence time. And when you have a decay of particle, you have all the information, the particle is here, and then it decay away. The entropy increase because you don't know where are the other particle. You can set up toy model and the Getanken experiment without the Weisskopf-Wigner approximation. For example, if you consider a perfectly reflecting sphere which reflects the wave function of all the mesons, you can describe decay by an emission matrix, even here behind this. Okay, maybe I must accelerate direct and indirect violation. So the CP violation in the field of CP violation, the CP violation parameter is a complex parameter. Here I found that it's I found the real part, the so-called real part. But if I use the so-called Bell-Steinberger approximation, that is to say, the decay of the short kaon is dominated by the decay to a particular isospin state. And with this approximation and with the influence of gravity, you find that the real part of the violation parameter is the one which is predicted here is the one which is measured in experiment. The argument of this number is the one which is measured in the experiment, are moreover in the so-called direct violation. And I have no time for those of you who don't know this field to present what is direct violation. It's another predicted process. It's the ratio of an amplitude. It's not in the mixing, it's a ratio of an amplitude. It's defined epsilon prime, this direct violation parameter is defined, for example, by this ratio of quantum amplitude of these two decays. But remember, a number has a physical meaning if it's independent of the phase convention. So you must multiply by a rephasing factor, for RF, it's RP, a rephasing factor. But if you assume CPT, which is assumed usually in the field of CP violation invariance, this rephasing factor is 1. But here, it's not. CPT is broken by Earth. And the rephasing factor, you see, you have L above, S below, so you multiply by S above and L below, and this is the rephasing factor. This standard rephasing factor is given by this. So the definition of this eta not is given by this, and you find that the real part of epsilon prime over epsilon is given by this number, which is the number which is measured experimentally. I performed the same calculation within a relativistic framework with a Schwarzschild spacetime and Klein-Gordon equation and find the same result. Maybe so, as I explained, maybe I go directly to the conclusion. So understanding the ultimate origin of CP violation is of prime importance because, as suggested by Sakharov, it might explain how our matter-dominated universe emerged during its early evolution. The observed present level of CP violation in neutral meson experiment is far too small to build early universe model whose asymmetric particle production is compatible with the observed dominance of baryon over antibaryon in our present universe. So if you assume the standard model and the new fundamental constant, which is CP violation, it's off. But this identification of gravity as the source of CP violation in kaon experiment renews this issue in depth. The fact that gravity is the ultimate source of CP violation open Very interesting perspective to set up asymmetric particle production model in the early universe compatible with the present state of our universe. So not only do we solve the problem of action and so on, strong CP problem, but we also solve the problem of this baryon symmetry. To demonstrate that gravity is the source of CP variation, we analyze the influence of the Earth gravity on neutral current oscillation. The main effect of a Newtonian potential is to couple the strangeness oscillation and the strange quartz disturbing. This coupling is responsible for the observed CP variation, but gravity-induced CP variation is in fact a CPT variation with T conservation, which from an aesthetical point of view is far more satisfactory because the T variation at 10 to the minus 3 at the microscopic level. I never accept this picture of of nature. A T conservation rather than a T variation with CPT conservation, but the finite lifetime of the short life current induces a rotation of the imaginary CPT variation parameter such that it become real, and the effect is observed as a CP and T variation. But no, these are the observation, but we explain this observation. Both indirect and direct variation parameters are predicted, 3 parameters, in agreement with the experimental data, and the relativistic generalization of this Newtonian model to a Schwarzschild geometry confirms these new results. Here are the results I wanted to present here at APC. Thank you. Voilà, ça allait trop vite. Bon, on peut toujours le retrouver sur HAL ou sur Archive. Il n'y a pas, si, comme tu disais, c'est un niveau Messia ou Cohen en mécanique quantique. Et puis, voilà, c'est tout. Et donc, ça résout un grand nombre de problèmes qui étaient ouverts en physique des particules. Moi, ce qui m'avait toujours gêné, c'est présenter le résultat un fit, parce que c'est un fit dans le modèle standard, on met ça comme un mécanisme. Non, on connaît les lois de la physique, les lois canoniques de la physique, on doit pouvoir expliquer un nouveau phénomène. Ou alors c'est un nouveau phénomène, mais ce qui est bizarre, c'est 1,5, 10-3, c'est pas 100%, c'est pas 0 ou 1 comme la relation de P. Voilà. Oui.
Est-ce que vous avez essayé d'appliquer ça aux oscillations dans le domaine des B?
Oui, alors dans le domaine des B, on peut l'interpréter aussi. Les formules donnent que pour le quark le plus lourd, c'est minime, mais en supposant que chaque quark fait sa relation de CP, ça donne le bon résultat. Mais autant dans le système des kaons, c'est très bien documenté. J'arrive à lire les papiers expérimentaux et à suivre le type de data processing qui a été fait dans les années 70. Autant dans le domaine des B, les black box entre les détecteurs et puis l'interface, quand je vais poser les questions aux expérimentateurs, je sais pas. Là, c'est une rupture anthropologique dans la physique, hein. Bon, moi, je suis pas. J'ai fait le débat de physique théorique ici, mais j'ai pas. La physique des particules, c'est une communauté qui a ses codes. Bon, moi, je m'intéresse à toute la physique et le B peut être interprété, mais c'est suffisant. Pour moi, hein, c'est la prédiction de ces 3 nombres sans spéculation, sans approximation un peu douteuse. Hein, 10-15, c'est quand même un petit nombre. 10-17 aussi, me convainc. Et en plus, ça ramène une esthétique. Il n'y a pas de violation de T à l'échelle microscopique. Donc, je ne sais pas comment on a pu accepter ça. Enfin, bon. Mais c'est des consensus. Bon, la science, c'est une somme de consensus historiques et sociaux. Donc, c'est des gens qui se sont mis d'accord. Pour le moment, ils sont pas d'accord avec ça, évidemment. Mais bon, moi, ça me semble répondre à ça. Et donc, le B, oui, mais en restant au niveau du cas. C'est-à-dire, j'aurais présenté ça il y a 20 ans. Il n'y avait pas les résultats du B. Voilà. Oui.
Still on this point, I wanted to understand a bit better which measurements did you try to interpret for the B system, because in 2012, I think there was a paper by Bavar, you measured reversal violation using a system in which the initial pharmaceutical.
Yes. I agree.
Was that the one that you tried to?
No, T reversal. I can interpret experiment where I can read and understand the full set of data processing operation. As soon as you assume CPT invariance, you will end up with T violation. My main point is that as soon as you have gravity, and it's well known, as soon as you have curvature, CPT does not work. You can have particle protection.
It was not assumed that in that particular measurement,
No, they always assume CPT.
But
okay. But no, what I'm saying is that I take the classical, all the experiment on CP variation in neutral count system, and there is a very clear, straightforward, and aesthetical explanation within the framework of canonical quantum mechanics without speculative assumption and so on. And for me, up to now, it solves this problem. But I agree that there are plenty of but I can answer you, but what about action? What about the dipolar moment of the neutron? What about all these problems? On est dans un déni quand même là, dans la science moderne. So it's an open problem. So it's why I'm making make a seminar at JC Lab, 2 seminars, and we make seminar elsewhere to explain. But what I found is that it's a scientific community which is rather not open to, not that open to this type of simple physics, textbook physics.
No more questions? So let's thank you again.
Merci.